We Get Outdoors, I am the most privileged individual on planet Earth because most days of the week I get to speak to another incredible human being about their world, their life, what they do in the outdoors, their adventures, their misadventures, and huge amounts more. And today is no different. Today I'm joined by Karina Hollekim. If I pronounce that right, we'll come on to that in a second. Or Hollekim, we'll get there. She is now a performance coach, motivational speaker, thinker, all sorts of things. And in her past, well, we'll get into that. But it'd be fair to say she got pretty good at jumping off things with a parachute behind her that she used maybe late in the day for some of those jumps. We'll wait and see. Karina, welcome to the We Get Outdoors podcast.
Thank you, Rob. What an introduction. I'm honored. Thank you.
Well, it's all true, right?
Well, yeah, we'll talk about that. We'll get into that. I'm really honored to be part of your show. Thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. So for people who haven't bumped into you on the internet and in other such places, what one or two or maybe three things should the world know about you that can like frame the start of this conversation?
Right. Well, I think what you would see if you Google me on the internet, you'd see that I was a professional skier and I was a professional base jumper, which basically means that you jump off of buildings, antennas, span, and mountains with a parachute on your back. And then you'd see that I had a near fatal accident back in 2006, which left me in a wheelchair and with the prediction of never being able to walk again. And you'd hopefully see me today skiing around, walking in the mountains, being active, surfing, rock climbing, doing everything that gives me pure joy with my family. And maybe you'd see me on some stage telling my story, sharing my experiences with thousands of people. That was more than three, wasn't it, Rob?
Yeah, but that's fine. I'm open to. I'll just nod and we can just keep going. It's fine.
Okay. So
Wow.
I think that was my story, like with the quickest version that I could give you.
Fantastic. So there's so many places we can go in this, but what I'm always curious about, with people who end up doing things that to them wouldn't necessarily be defined as extreme, but a lot of the world would go, "Holy smoke, that's crazy." I'm always curious about what was it in your upbringing or your childhood that brought you to a place where jumping off an antenna or a building or a cliff just seemed like a logical thing to have a go at?
Yeah, I like the way that you get into that question. You think, well, I think that there's multiple answers to that, and obviously, it's the sum of many little things that actually got me to where I ended up. But I think, first of all, it had to do with my dad. My dad, he was definitely an outdoor guy. He loved rock climbing, he loved skiing, he loved everything, expeditions, mountain expeditions. He was traveling the world. So this kind of became my natural approach to life. I wasn't handed a doll when I was a little kid. I was, climbing in trees, I was climbing in mountains, and it was normal for me to join my dad on these adventures. And so I never learned to be afraid of heights. I learned to climb the trees, and that was a big difference. But second, which probably was equally important to why I ended up where I did, was the fact that my mother, our family, we had a big car accident at the age of when I was 4 years old, and this car accident, it left my mom paralyzed in her entire right side. She was in a coma for 4 months. And when she woke up from that coma, she had sustained a severe brain injury and she had lost all memory. So basically when I came back to the hospital and I met my mom for the first time after her accident, I realized that she didn't know who I was. And that obviously made a lasting impression even in a 4-year-old.
Mm.
So these two factors, the factor that I felt like I lost my mom. I lost my mom as a motherly figure. I lost her in my life. She lived in nursing homes. She lived like, yeah, in hospitals ever since, and she never came back to being a mom. So that left me with my dad. So it was my dad and I who grew up together. And so my dad basically became my everything. And it became, how can you say, like unnaturally important for me to get acknowledged by my dad, to get his praise, to be seen by my dad. And I understood quite early that his his love language, the way that I could touch him, the way that I could make him see me was through outdoor activities. It was through rock climbing. It was through joining him in the mountains. It was through our kayaking. It was through everything that we did together. That's how we bonded. That's how we connected. And so that kind of became my language as well. And I think it kind of escalated from there. But growing into my youth, I think I felt like I had this void somehow that I needed to fill. It was probably a void that came from feeling that I lost my mom at an early stage, but it was also a void because I had lost contact with my dad. And I needed to feel good about myself. I needed to feel like I was good enough. And I didn't feel like I didn't fit into the, 9 to 5 lifestyle. I didn't fit in with the normal life that I thought was expected of me. And so I needed to fill my void with something that would give me mastery, something that would make me feel like I could master life. And so for me, getting into the skiing, it gave me the sense of mastery, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't hardcore enough. It didn't put me really on a test. So I figured that, you know, being a base jumper, you're standing on top of a cliff and you're mastering the fear of dying because you're kind of balancing life and death. It feels like you're holding life and death in your hands. And the fear of dying is probably our greatest fear. So I figured if I could master that, if I could master the fear of dying, I can master anything. All my everyday problems, all my everyday situations and issues, they become nothing in comparison. And so that gave me the self-esteem to handle my everyday life, to kind of fit into my life. And
Mm.
so at that point, it became really important to me to be able to do those activities. That was a long answer, wasn't it, Rob?
Yeah, but that's a really good answer, though. Keep them coming. I like it. I can just sit here and nod all morning. It's no problem. That's good. I like it. So there's all sorts of interesting things that are going there, and it would be very tempting for me to tell you too much about me because there's some definite similarities there in the stories, probably more similar than you could ever believe. Uh, but one of the things that you mentioned there was that fear of death. Is that how is that fear inside of you or inside of people, or what what is it really, do you think?
Um, I think it's something about the fear of fear of leaving this world, fear of leaving, this um I don't know, maybe it's just going into something that we do not control. We don't know what's on the other side. We don't know what is death really. I mean, nobody has been able to come back and tell us about it. That's really been there. And the people who do come back and tell us about it, that has been really, really close, they actually don't tell us bad things. They just tell us about some light and some positivity, some good emotions. But still, I think it's that fear of letting go of this world and not we're not done yet. We're not finished. We want to live. We want to continue this life, continue these experiences, continue, this togetherness. I don't know. Maybe it's the fear of missing out on that part.
There is that, but it's uh, there's an interesting thought that could sound like I'd be advocating suicide, and I'm really, really, really not. But there was an interesting perspective I heard not so long ago, which was, what if actually it's the start as opposed to the end? Um, and and I was like, whoa! I put my pen down. I had to stop. I had to stop and think for 10 minutes. What about if it's the start, not the end? So if it's the start of something, then really it's an opportunity, not a fear. I was like, whoa, that's scrambled my brain a bit in a new way.
But if you're saying it's the start, then you're actually meaning the being close to something, being close to dying, but being able to come back, right? Or am I understanding it wrong?
So the person who was speaking was talking more about the what if the start of the journey in life is actually the end of this bit of life?
Hmm.
And they
Yeah.
weren't saying it was or it wasn't. It was just a question to go and mash your brain up with and see what comes out of the other side. But in terms of a perspective change, I was like, well, you know, Hindus, for instance, if you were Hindu, you would believe in 15 lives, and
Yeah.
you would believe that you're going to come back next time as a thing. Um, uh, and that actually that's to be celebrated, that you're coming back as a new better version of you, as opposed to everything just ending finally with nothing left. That's it, done. Um, and Yeah, it was just an interesting perspective, I suppose.
It is an interesting because it's all about what we believe. But what I'd like to think is that what if you're wrong? At least I would make sure that I would maximize this life, you know, as much as I can
Hmm.
in case you're because I wouldn't want to go into this thinking that what if that is the start of something even better? And what if you were wrong and I had, tossed away the opportunity that I have in this life in order to come into, let's say, the next level, and there wasn't any. So
Yeah.
I would like to think that getting close to it, like I did, getting close to death, getting the perspective that you might actually die or you may die doing the activity that you're doing right now, and you're fighting with every inch of your body to not die, to survive. That perspective actually opens up a whole new world because it's kind of like you've tasted death in a way, but you weren't ready.
Hmm.
And it's almost like, if you've ever had a girlfriend or a boyfriend, and you at some point you realized you took him or her for granted. They were great boyfriends or girlfriends, great relationship, but you just kind of took it for granted. You didn't appreciate it the way that you should have. And then the moment they're gone because he or she left you, you're like, oh no, what did I do? How come I didn't take it for granted? It was so good. And that's kind of how I felt about life, felt about all the activities that I did, everything that I had in life. You somehow didn't appreciate it the way that you should. Now it was almost, it was going to go away for you. It was going to be taken away from me. And then when I got it back because I survived, that's when I realized I'm never going to take this life for granted anymore. I'm never going to think that, hey, I want to stop every day. I want to be grateful for what I have. I want to be grateful for the little things. And I don't mean for being alive, because that is such a big thing. And yes, we do somehow take that for granted after a while, but it's about those little things that I fill my life with, that I fill my everyday with, that I want to be able to, yeah, be grateful for, because they are the ones that create the moments and the memories that I take with me for the rest of my life.
Mm.
So, yeah.
So talk me through that first base jump. Uh, the the few minutes before you jumped off the edge, and and the feelings and sensations of jumping off the edge for the first time. What was going on? What's the story?
Yeah. It's an interesting question. I was my first base jump I was doing with an American called Jeb Corliss. He had taken me under his wing and he was going to teach me how to base jump. So we were up in Twin Falls, Idaho, and I was going to jump off of a bridge, which is called the Prine.
I know the bridge.
Uh, you know this?
I interviewed what's
Of
his
course.
name, who runs a base jumping school there.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, I can't remember his name. Begins with a J as well.
Miles?
Say again?
Miles Dasher?
No. Oh,
No.
that- it's going to drive me crazy. Um, and I feel embarrassed now because I can't remember his name. Hang on a second. Oh, dear me. It's all gone. Um,
Did you say a base
oh,
jumping school?
yeah, Sean Tuma.
Ah, I don't know him.
He runs a base jumping school. Oh, that's my YouTube channel going in the background. How rubbish is that? Um, he runs a base jumping school based in at Twin Falls in Idaho, teaching people to jump off that bridge.
Ah, great. Excellent. Yeah. But like it's been a while since I was there last. So
Yeah, yeah,
that's
that's
probably
fair enough.
why.
Yeah. It was
But
a few
anyway,
years
that's
ago.
yeah, that's the bridge that I did my first base jump out of. Um which was actually a great place to start because it is legal to jump off of that bridge, which gives you obviously a lot more time and you can do it in the daytime and that's great. Um And I remember walking out onto that bridge together with Jeb. And at this point, I did not have as many skydives as it is required or suggested or advised. But I was very eager to learn how to base jump. And I remember walking onto that bridge and climbing over the rail. And at that point, I felt like I was very ready. I was very eager. I was motivated. I was ready. Um, and I didn't have a lot of fear. It was kind of like I hadn't even thought of fear as something that was part of it. This was all about joy. This was just about me wanting to get this done. And I stood on the outside of the bridge, and it's pretty uncomfortable standing there on the outside because I know that today they have made like they've built a little board on the outside. So you actually have a springboard there that gives you a good, foothold. But back in the days, there was nothing there. So you're just balancing your feet on the inside of the bridge while you're on the outside. Um, and I jumped off, held the little chute for about 2 seconds, 3 seconds, and then tossed it, and the parachute opened, and I landed safely, actually in the water at that time. Um, and I climbed up into the boat and drove away. And I remember feeling almost disappointed. I was like, was this it? Is this all? I mean, I didn't really have the emotions. There was not like an emotional roller coaster. I wasn't really feeling overwhelmed with all these impressions. And then I realized just, you know, an hour later or whatever, I realized that I was actually so scared. I was so afraid that I had what they call a tunnel vision. I did not really see anything of what was going on around me. I didn't open up towards taking in these impressions because I was so scared. All that I could do was focus on the task that I had in hand. And that was all about reach or like tossing away that little pilot chute that I had in my hand and counting to these 3 seconds that ended up being 2 seconds, and do what I had been programmed to do. And it wasn't until later that I actually got less afraid, less scared, that I could open up and really take in all the visuals, everything that was going on around me. And that's when I started getting, how do you say it? I started noticing my fear. I started realizing the possible consequences. I started thinking. I started, the world started actually happening in the moment that I was experiencing it. And that's when I really started to appreciate the base jumping.
Mm.
Because if I were to take you through a second of my base jumping when I started realizing what was actually going on, I would say that I felt like the moment that I stepped off of the mountain, I felt like I was in this science fiction movie where I was the protagonist of the movie and everything around me was standing still. It was so quiet that I would actually be able to, as I was falling slowly towards the ground, I could see a little bird that would step off the cliffside next to me at the same time. And we could actually dive down, you know, the cliffside together before we actually took off and flew away from the cliff. And those moments of call it mindfulness, call it presence, call it, I don't know the word. Um, that was magic. And that was everything that I loved about base jumping because that stillness, that quietness, it's something that I have not experienced in any other part of life. And
Mm.
then the seconds after, that's when you started performing as a base jumper because that's when the wind speeds up and you're actually starting flying and you can fly away from the cliff. Um, and then you get into a different stage of the base jumping. But that first split second is probably the most magical second.
Wow, that's incredible. I work with quite a lot of athletes and top business owners as well. And one of the things we often talk about is the best decisions and the best moments that they've had that they would like to recreate more of. Um, Often are they feel ridiculously easy, ridiculously simple. They're quiet, they're calm, they're four-dimensional, not three-dimensional. They're like out of this world in terms of feeling, and and it doesn't feel hard. It as we spoke off air, and I used the word magical, but that would be another word that they would use. It's almost magical, and it's really strange that when people retire from that high level business or that high level sport, how they have to go and find something else because it's such a precious moment, but to recreate it in normal life is very close to impossible.
Yeah, unfortunately, I would say. But I think it's true. But I think we hear about it from, yeah, from like you say, top performers in any kind of activity. Really, it doesn't have to be sports. It can be in music. It's like you can say it can be in business. You can actually see it in kids quite often, and something like what they call flow,
Mm.
and to get this optimal state of flow, where you basically just lose track of time and place, and you're just so in the zone that you're like everything is within this little image of yours. And I haven't really been able to get into the same kind of emotion, but I realized that when I'm speaking, when I'm on a stage, and I had this moment. I remember that was, of course, before COVID. We could actually gather people, but there was one time I was in the Stockholm Globe and I was performing for 17,000 people, which was insane.
Awesome.
It was it was so many people that I was like totally like I lost track of everything. And I was so scared. I was so nervous beforehand that I was ready to vomit. I was like, my legs were just shivering. I was pasty, totally white. My heart was just on the outside of me. And I wasn't sure if I was, going to be able to stand up straight on that stage. And then the second I walked onto the stage, it was kind of like the body took over for me. Like, and I just boom, got into this mode where I was, you know, in control. And sharing my story there, getting the feedback from the audience, feeling like I had them in my hand and I could hear a needle drop when I stopped talking and I wanted them to be quiet. It was so magical, and I felt like at that moment, those 20 minutes that I was on that stage, that felt like just an instant. I had completely lost time of place and time, and just I was probably in that same flow zone, but it was different because it wasn't extreme in any way.
Or was it
It was
though?
probably the same kind of feeling.
You could argue that, or not argue, but you could consider that extreme is something where you are just pushing yourself well beyond a place where you've been before. And so we can all experience and that's maybe why kids can experience that state far more easily, because they are consistently going beyond where they've been before. It's almost a shame as adults we seem to switch childlike stuff off when we become adults, because those kids that are continuously experiencing that as they go the next step beyond where they've been to before. And I don't know how many people you'd spoken in front of before, but the opportunity to speak in front of 17,000 is pretty limited. It doesn't happen that often. So I'd imagine you were, and I guess you can tell me, but maybe 1,000 or up to 5,000 before, or maybe nowhere near that big. And then suddenly you've pushed way beyond that threshold. And here you are again. It
Yeah.
is extreme.
No, it's true. And that's the thing. I had spoken to, I think it was 3,500 or 4,000 people, which is also a lot. And I knew that I knew my story. I knew I could share my story. I knew that I could touch people with my story, but I didn't know if it would hold an audience of that 17,000, because that is different. And if I could get the intimacy with 17,000 people, how do you really get intimate with 17,000 people, like that? So that was my insecurity. But I think that I've been pretty, like since the extremes that I've been doing in my life before my accident was about life and death experiences. It's obviously really hard to push the envelope today because I'm no longer pushing the life and death experience. But then on the other hand, what is death really? Yes, it's the loss of a life. But imagine getting out on a stage in front of 17,000 people and you lose it felt kind of like I was getting naked in front of those 17,000 people because I was sharing such a personal story. I was sharing what was inside, my inner thoughts, my inner feelings. It was like I was getting undressed with my emotions. And if they didn't appreciate that, if they didn't like it, if they didn't enjoy it, it basically meant that they didn't approve of me. And sometimes that can feel even worse then that feels like you're dying in front of all these people. You
Hmm.
just want to go, you'd rather go and die. I mean, I'm saying this as a joke, but the feeling, it's pretty, it's a fearful experience for sure.
It is. I can relate. I'm at the moment. I'm building an online package, for want of a better word, for it's called the Dads and Kids Yard Adventure Pack. So it's about dads and kids doing cool stuff in the outdoors together, but on a do it in your back garden, backyard sort of scale. So it's not climbing. It's like climbing the mountains in your back garden as opposed to actually having to go to the mountains. And
That's awesome. I love the idea.
and I'm doing it. It wasn't my idea for me to do it. Um, I'm doing it because uh, you hang out with all sorts of different people. I've got business partners and friends and clients, and people say to you on a Monday morning, "What do you do at the weekend?" I said, "Oh, I gamified making a wooden garden fence with my daughter for the weekend." They're like, "You did what?" I'm like, "Yeah, we made a garden fence. It's a 2 meter high by 20-meter long garden fence. It's not exactly small." And they said, "Oh, so she was with you for 20 minutes." I'm like, no, 10 hours on Saturday and 10 hours on Sunday. And I gave her own bits of wood and her own little drill and screws and saw. And she's by then she was 4.5, by the way. So she's quite small. And all of these people kept saying, "You should go and help other dads do the same. That's incredible." And I'm like, okay. And now I'm very close to the end of building this package. I've got about 3 more hours of filming to do, and then we should be good. But it has been the largest battle I have arguably ever faced, because in front of thousands of people, I'm going to go and put the one thing that is probably the most important in my world to me, which is being a good dad, and put it out there for the opportunity to be praised and help other dads. But also, we both know how social media is and how an audience is. They can, the keyboard warriors can sit there and type their horrible remarks. And so also, I kind of get it, I suppose, is what I'm saying, is that you just don't know until you don't know until you know, until you've done it. And by the time you've done it, it's too late. But you don't know until you step on the stage and open your mouth and deliver that first sentence.
You don't. And then again, I'm thinking, well, just for to get a view on what you're about to share, is that you're sharing one side of you being a good dad, of you actually sharing time with your daughter. And that is not like I am going out here saying I am the perfect dad, because this
Far
is
from
just
it.
one, it's just one side of it. And what you do to be that good dad in the other, whatever, how many hours of the day, nobody's going to know about that. So you're just showing this one side that actually has brought you closer to your daughter. That's just an inspiration for others who want to get closer to them. So I'm thinking this is a great idea. I would love to see that. So I'm interested in seeing it when it comes out.
I'll
And
send it
I
to you.
think this thing, yeah, I think this is the thing, that we shouldn't be so afraid to actually share the good stories, the good ideas, because I believe that most people, and that is most people obviously out there, they're good people. They want to see, and they want to build you up. They want to see you showing your good sides, and we want to share and root for you. And obviously there are some people who are somehow in a good not in a good place themselves. And when you are not in a good place yourself, it becomes harder to praise and build other people up. But it's not because they want to be bad towards you. It's probably just because they're not in a good place themselves. So
Mm.
I don't think we should put that much, energy into that. Because if we do put energy into those people, it just brings us down and it stops or it prevents us from doing the things that we want to see more of in this life. And I think we want to see more of the good. We want to get inspired by people like you
Mm.
who can manage to build a fence for 10 hours with your 4-year-old daughter. That is just, it is fascinating. It's incredible. It's amazing.
Well, we both had fun doing it. That's it. It was a hilarious weekend, um, uh, and no bones were broken and no children were hurt, which is always probably a good thing as well. Um, yes, and I suppose that then flips that perspective on that 17,000 is so. Let's say worst case scenario, there's 1,000 people who are in a bad space. Um, there's still 16,000 with smiley faces and big wide open ears who are ready to listen and learn and engage. Um, and so, coming back towards adventure sports and extreme sports, it's all about perspective, isn't it? Base jumping can be could be perceived to be incredibly dangerous, and yet you could say it's safer than crossing the road in a big city somewhere.
Yeah, I believe that the margins are smaller in base jumping, and it's kind of like, for sure, there is no doubt that base jumping is dangerous. And yes, we tend to talk about the fact that it's more dangerous to drive a car, and that we do that all the time without even thinking about it. And it's a good picture, obviously, because we do so many dangerous things in our everyday life that we don't even think about because they become our normal. But then on the other hand, there are not very many base jumpers in this world, and it is dangerous to base jump. It is lethal, even.
Mm,
May, it may be lethal. But then again, I choose to believe that there are so many other elements to base jumping or to extreme sports in general. And the point is, like, if I take myself, for instance, the reason I chose to jump off of cliffs is because I felt like I needed that in order to feel whole in this world. I would not have been who I was or who I ended up being or even who I am today if it wasn't for the fact that I found mastery. I found a community that accepted me for who I was in base jumping. um, if I hadn't jumped off. I don't even dare to think how I would have ended up if it wasn't for extreme sports. And of course, that is a question that we will never have the answer to, which is probably a good thing. But I was on a path that was more of a destructive path, and it was not a good path. And what took me away from that path was the ability to get onto that emotional roller coaster that was called extreme sports. And the because I dared to go down that path, it opened me up to being vulnerable, to showing my vulnerability, to showing my fear to other people who was in the same situation, who would also open up and show their own vulnerability. And then take one step further and actually dive into it and come out feeling stronger, feeling victorious, feeling at ease, feeling peaceful in our minds and ready to, move on. And that roller coaster, that emotional roller coaster was the most powerful experience and the most precious experience I could have ever imagined. And I needed that
mm.
at that time being. And today, I I don't need it anymore because I've been there and I've worked my way through it. But I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for that journey, that roller coaster. So I'm grateful for having it or for yeah, for experiencing it.
So true. It's so true. So, um, when I was at university, we watched a film once, and it was about it was a French film, all subtitled, and it was about it's quite an iconic French film. But it's about a guy growing up in the suburbs of Paris, in sort of gangland Paris, and the end of the film is him committing suicide, and he jumps off a building, and the end of the film is him falling, and he says, "After all, the falling doesn't hurt." Um, and you've mentioned your accident several times, but and if you're prepared to, I'm just curious about what happened, um, and how that's impacted on the short term part of your life afterwards, but then brought you forwards to 2021 where you are today. So you can share as much or as little as you feel prepared to. I don't mind, but I think that it would only do the story justice to explore it a little bit further.
Right. Yeah. No, I'll be happy to share it. And the thing is, sharing it doesn't hurt me anymore. It probably did the first times I talked about it, but now I've talked about it many times, and that's kind of been like a, you know, yeah, call it psychotherapy, call it whatever, but it's been like my own going through this to help me get to where I am probably. But like what happened was that this was back in 2006, and I was at the time being I was at this it's World Cup in paragliding, and it was an aerobatic show, and I was invited there. It was a huge show, and I was invited there to jump with my wingsuit, jump out of an airplane to entertain in the breaks. There was a show, and this was, I remember we had jumped all Saturday. This was the Sunday morning, and for every jump that we had done, it became better, it became closer, it became more perfect, and we were super excited about jumping. And this was the first jump on a Sunday morning, and I remember I was on a high at this moment. I was in love. I was in love with life. I was in love probably with the guy. I was like, everything was awesome. And I was there with some of my best friends. And I remember the atmosphere just inside the plane. It was awesome. We were giving high fives. We were telling poor bad jokes. It was like, it was nothing to be afraid of, nothing to be worried about. We had done this thousands of times before, and we were going to fly our wingsuits, but maybe even more important, we were just going to have fun. We were just going to play. And I remember that I jumped out of the airplane, and I was flying, first of all, with a camera that was attached to my helmet, but I also had like a small, like one of those smoke boxes attached to my legs that followed our every move and created just like a beautiful pattern in the sky. And as I jumped off, I was flying right next to my friend Geraldine, and we were flying side by side, making S turns over and under each other. And I could see her smile in the midair. And I was thinking, just like, woo, this is a perfect jump. And as it was time to release the parachute, I could hear the clapping. I could hear the shouting from those thousands of spectators that were underneath me. So I just let out a scream of just pure happiness. I was like, woo, yeah. And then just a split second after, I realized that something had gone wrong. I realized that I had a malfunction in my parachute. And my first thought was, I'll fix it. I'll fix it. But then soon the rotation speed was probably over 100 kilometers per hour. And the forces, I mean, it was too much to handle. I was dangling like a doll next to the parachute. I couldn't control my hands anymore. I couldn't even lift my hands to get up to the lines that were tangled. And at that moment, I realized that the malfunction that I had, it was something that they call a tension knot, and that had killed several of my friends before. I had lost many friends just like that. And I realized that I was probably going to die just like them. And I remember thinking that it felt stupid because I had done so many dangerous things in my life. I'd been jumping off the most dangerous mountains in the world, and now I was going to die like this in a routine skydive from a plane. And then I remember, like, you hear about when you're thinking or when you're about to die, you hear that your life is kind of playing in a fast forward in your, or maybe fast reverse in your mind. But for me, it wasn't anything like that. All I was focused on was fixing the problem. So I remember just talking to myself. I'm like, fix the problem, Karina. Come on, you can do this. I know you can do it. Come on, counter steer. Try to do something. Try to lift your hands. Try to get them up. Use your body. I was doing everything that I was physically capable of to try and fix the problem. But very soon I realized that there was nothing I could do. And I saw that there was a big rock in the ground. And the last thought that I had was just, okay, Karina, brace for impact. And I hit the ground. I hit this huge, huge rock with more than 100 kilometers per hour. And it all turned black. And then I woke up. I don't know how long, like not long after, split seconds after. And I remember that I felt like I had this bird's perspective looking at myself from above. And I could see that my two legs, they were sticking out like in L formation, sticking out of my body. And I was thinking that, is this how it feels like to be dead? Am I dead now? And then it was kind of like just a brief moment after, I could feel that this enormous uh, pain, this overwhelming pain was just kind of growing in my body. And it was so painful. It was so bad that I realized that if I can feel this kind of pain, it's impossible to be dead. I
Sorry.
cannot be dead. I feel this pain. And so that pain became a positive affirmation of still being alive. And then I passed out from the pain. But I realized for that split moment that, hey, welcome this pain, because that means I'm still alive. And so then I woke up in the hospital. I think it was 2 days later. I woke up. I had 25 fractures in both of my legs. I had open fractures, shattered knees. Both of my legs were just shattered. And I met a doctor who said that you are lucky to be alive, but you're never going to be able to walk again. And at that moment, I realized that this is an accident that's going to affect me for the rest of my life. And if I fast forward till today, I went through the next 3 to 4 years going through 20 surgeries. I was in and out of hospitals, in and out of rehab centers. I was basically living in the hospital for those 3 to 4 years. Struggling to get back to my normal life, my everyday life. And I remember thinking that learning how to walk again, that wasn't enough for me. That wasn't it, because it didn't give me the emotions that I needed. I didn't have any passion about walking. I mean, walking, I took it for granted, to be honest with you. I needed something more. I needed something bigger. I needed a dream. And for me, that dream was to come back to the mountains, come back to my mountains, come back to my skiing, my powder skiing. that was gonna give me my why, the why to wake up in the morning. The why was I gonna fight? Why was I gonna struggle? Why was I gonna work out 10 minutes more, 10 minutes longer than everybody else in order to get to that dream? That was when I actually was able to go back to my passion and my values in life. And yeah, I guess that's what actually gave me the drive to come back to my mountains where I am today. Because today I am skiing, I am mountaineering, I am ski touring, I am doing everything that gives me joy, that gives me, you know, that feeling of being who I am, who I've always been. And I can now be the mom that I want to be for my two boys because I can be an active mom. I can give them the values that my dad gave me when I was a little kid. That has brought me so much joy and that has given me, the sense of my identity and my self-esteem and my everything. And I am really, really grateful for that. And I wouldn't have been able to come back to where I am if I didn't have that passion.
It's interesting because there's two questions, and there's one that people often ask themselves is like, why did this happen to me? Um, but there's another question that I'm most curious about, though, which isn't that question. And I think this will sit very comfortably with you. Is why do you believe that happened for you?
I like your phrasing. I like your angle. I think it happened for me because, first of all, I think it just saved my life because on the path that I was on the carousel that I was on, that carousel that was going to speed up. And all I know about carousels is when they speed up, they tend to go faster and faster, and eventually they throw their passengers off. In my carousel, it had definitely sped up. So if I had continued on that carousel, I don't even know if I would have survived. So I think that my accident saved my life. And it happened for me because it made me stop. It made me realize everything that I had in life to be grateful for. It made me realize that I needed to find my peace. I needed to find my self worth within myself because it wasn't about all these endeavors. It wasn't about all these achievements. It wasn't about everything that was on the outside of me. It was about approving of who I am, who I was, and who I will be within myself. It wasn't about asking the question, who am I? That is a huge question. And I didn't have the answer to it. And I still don't have the answer to it. But it was about asking the question, who do I want to be? Because who do I want to be is a lot easier. I can always say, who do I strive to be? Who do I look for to not copy, but like copy the values, or what do I appreciate in other people and people I look up to? And it's a lot easier to try to be more of that than to define who am I, because a lot of times when we define that, we come short.
Hmm.
And I think that's probably one of the most important lessons that I learned throughout that time, was to find peace within myself, accept myself for who I am and who I want to be, instead of always trying to look for acceptance in others and get that acceptance for them from them.
Hmm.
because that is not as important as it is, or it's just a, if you're always gonna need acceptance from others in order to feel good enough, you're on a constant journey that you're never gonna get fulfilled. But when you can give it to yourself, I don't know, it becomes so much easier and so much more, so much better.
And have you managed to jump since?
No, I haven't. I haven't managed and I haven't tried. And I don't think I ever will try. First of all, because I think that in total, I probably spent 5, 6 years out of my life struggling to get back to my normal, to get back to my everyday life. And today, I don't have the body that I used to. I can do a lot, but I cannot do everything. I cannot jump. I cannot have a hard impact. If I have a hard impact, if I have a hard landing, my leg will most likely break. And if my leg breaks, then they will not be able to reconstruct it. So I will lose my leg.
Mm.
And that's not really a risk that I'm willing to take. And when you no longer trust your body, when you don't trust it to take an impact, it does something to your self-esteem. You don't have the courage. You don't have the the yeah, the trust in yourself anymore. And that takes away the fun, takes away the joy. And I was in it for the joy. I was in it for the fun. It wasn't something that I had to do. I chose to do it. And I chose to do it because it gave me joy. It gave me a whole lot more, but it definitely gave me joy. And now it's taken the joy away from it. And I found out that I am so much more than just my base jumping and skydiving. And what was more important to me was to be able to be able to be in the outdoors, to be able to be out in the mountains, to be able to ski, to do those activities that I can share with my children, share with my friends, and share the joy together. And that became more important than my selfishness in it.
I have I have a little desire on occasions inside of myself to go back whitewater kayaking again. I'll be honest. However, I'm pretty deaf. Both of my ears have closed down pretty mostly because of cold water in my ears. They've both been operated on, and they need operating on
You know what
again.
I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, I can
You
hear what you're
hear
saying. That's all good, but
me?
it's
I'm just joking.
it's very loud my side, so I can hear you. So I have about 10% hearing on both sides, and courtesy of cold water and kayaking, and my right shoulder is, if I mess it up again, they can't operate and put it back together again. It just becomes a floppy mess. And I
Mm.
remember, and I've had a lot of thought about it. And do I want to be able to pick up my kids? Yes or no? If I carry on kayaking and screw my shoulder up, the answer is I won't be able to. Do I want to be able to hear
Mm.
my kids, I don't know, in a play at school, just hear them speak? Do I want to be able to
Mm.
do that? Yes or no? And they're quite, it's quite matter of fact questions, really, because there isn't a middle ground. Um, and uh, and so, would I like to go and do lots of whitewater kayaking again? Uh, Maybe, but probably maybe not. Um,
Yeah,
there's
it's great questions.
yeah,
Because it is, yeah, I would love to get the passion part of it. I would love to get the thrill, the experience, the joy, the emotions that it gave me, but I'm not willing to risk what it takes and what I might lose today in order to get there. And the thing is, you asked me, and I answer quite, you know, the way that I've taught myself to answer it, which is no, I am not willing to go back there. I do not want it. And I will also answer no, I do not miss it because I have so many other things that give me joy in my life. And that is the true answer. But it is also another truth to it. And the other truth is that I do not allow myself to miss it. I do not allow myself to go down that path and to long for it, to put it into the perspective where as I do not get that emotion in anything else that I do in life. Because that is also true. I will never get that emotion back. I will never get that feeling back. I will never get any of that base jumping journey. I don't get it back. And it's easy to miss that because it was such a big part of my life and I loved it. I mean, I loved it. But if I go down that path, if I think about all those things that I miss, that I can no longer do, that I can no longer get, that I have chosen that I will no longer do, it will only make me sad. It will make me feel like I'm not complete. It will make me feel like I'm not whole. And I don't want to be sad. I want to be happy for the things that I can do. I want to be happy for the fact that I can ski, I can rock climb, I can surf, I can be in the mountains, and not for the one thing that I can no longer do. And it's kind of like if we're going to, you know, think about our adolescence, think about our youth, think about all the fun that we had, think about all the crazy things that we did through that time. Yeah, it was awesome. It was cool, but I cannot go back. And in a way, I do not want to go back because there is a time and a place for everything. And I'm thinking about base jumping now in the same way that I think about my past. There was a time and a place for it, and I loved it. And I'm so thankful for it. And luckily, fortunately, I have a lot of images, a lot of footage that can remind me of those times of my life. And I'm just going to be grateful for that because that is the reason why I am here and why I am who I am today. So I choose to be grateful for that. And I choose not to go down that path where I allow myself to miss it because I know I will and I don't want to.
Maybe you don't need to. I read a book before I became a dad, and the book basically described parenting as a skydive. That's how they described it. Because, but it's an interesting skydive because there's no manual and nobody to teach you really. Like there's all sorts of stuff, but when that little baby gets born and you hold it in your arms and you think, "Hang on, I learned to drive," and there was a manual, there was an instructor, there was a test, and then I got given a driving license. And skydiving, like you do your land-based stuff, then you parachute, then you probably tandem, and I don't know what the sequence is, but there's a process, there's a mentor, there's an instructor, and uh, for me, parenting is like going off a waterfall in a kayak. That free fall bit. Um, I never believed I'd be grown up enough to say it, but arguably it's more exhilarating and more anything and everything than what I used to do and used to have. Um, More rewarding, better community. You built your own community. How cool's that? It's called the family. I mean, I don't know. It's so maybe you still are jumping, or maybe you still are on a jump. It's just with your husband and kids for the rest of their days, and that's how it is.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely extreme sports. Having two boys, challenging myself every day. They're pushing. I mean, this is to the extreme, way beyond what I used to push myself before. So yeah, I totally agree. And I think there's a lot of the same qualities that I use today as a mom. The ability to be able to stay calm through the most extreme moments, and it's the ability to feel like I have the power within myself to do good enough in the situation that I am in. And I will be able, well, luckily, parenting is a little bit more forgiving than base jumping because
That's
I
true.
can, I can, I can fail here for a brief moment. I can, lose my temper. I can, do. things, like, yeah, like I can fail for little moments and it's still going to be okay. I don't have to be a perfect mom. I mean, what is a perfect mom? But all I have to focus on is being able to, give them love, like unconditional love. And as long as I give them the unconditional love and the ability to grow and to understand that they are loved no matter who they are, no matter how they are, no matter what they decide to do in their lives, I think I've done a pretty good job. And that feels pretty okay to just remind myself of that every once in a while, that good enough is good enough, actually.
Hmm. So I have two final questions for you before we both have to go on our separate ways. And the first one is, um, and I had this conversation with a client a little while ago around rugby. But when one of your boys says, "Mummy, I want to base jump,"
I should have expected that one to come around. Yes. When one of my boys say that I want to base jump, honestly, I don't think any mom or dad uh, would appreciate or would want that um, question to come around, or that phrase to come around, because we know the danger that is involved. But I think that my kids, if they're anything like me, all I know that is that I cannot say, you're not allowed to do that. Because if I tell them you're not allowed to base jump, they are going to go out and base jump. That is for sure. So I think that all I have to do, or all I can do, is to, accept them, accept their choices. Um, Teach them about the flip side of base jumping, show them my scars, share with them my stories, and let them decide for themselves. But I think that there's a lot to be said from in between now and when that question may arise in the future. And that is the most important part, because what I can give them from now until then is that trust that I just talked about, is that security that they are good enough just the way that they are, so that hopefully they don't feel like they have to go out and jump off a mountain in order to get the self-esteem that they are good enough to fit into this world, that they don't have to balance life and death in their hands in order to feel mastery in life, that they can experience mastery in other elements of life, so that they don't have the urge within themselves to go out there and become base jumpers. So I hope that I will be able to give them that, so that that question never arises in, I don't know, 10, 12 years from now. But who knows? I guess I'll come back in 10, 12, 15 years and I'll let you know.
I can't wait. I can't wait.
My fingers
Um,
crossed. I'll keep my fingers crossed. That's all I can say.
yeah, I mean, all you can really do is equip them with all the resources they need to make the very best decisions for themselves in those moments. And really, if we've done that as parents, we've done our job.
I
Um,
think.
there's frankly not a lot more that we can do. So my final
Mhm.
question is: we've got a few minutes. I'm really curious about what your message to the world is. If you've got one message and 2 minutes,
Ooh.
what would you like to share?
Oh wow.
Off the
Um,
cuff, from the heart.
yes, exactly. Um, that is a pretty profound question. I think that the most important thing that I would like to share is that you are a lot more than you think you are. You have a lot more power, a lot more within yourself than you think. And that we should dare to go out in this world and look for what we want, look for what we need, look for what we want more of, and focus on the things that give us joy, that makes us happy, that creates the world that we would like to be in, that we would like to live in. Because to be honest, we choose, or we have the power within ourselves to choose the life that we want to live. And that is all about what we choose to see in our lives. And I choose to see the things that make me happy. I choose the things that make me grateful. I choose to see the joy in my family, in my kids' life. And I try to emphasize those things. I try to build on them. I try to create visuals, images in my mind and make them grow so that when I go to bed at night and I think back on my day, I see those moments. I see those moments of joy, of happiness, of good things. And that's made me feel like I had a good day. And that doesn't mean like bad things didn't happen, because they did happen. They do happen sometimes. And I don't choose the bad things that happen to me, but I choose how I want to deal with those bad experiences. And that's what shapes my future. That's what shapes my day. So I don't know if that was an encouragement, but that was my final last words, I guess.
Your final last words. That's incredible. And Karina, I just want to thank you for having a story to tell that you can proudly tell, that can have a profound impact on the world of other people. Everybody has their own story. Most people hide their story. Maybe I'm guilty of doing the same on occasions. Um, yeah. But the way that you share your story and what other people can hear from it, see in it, and feel in it, is deeply impactful to the rest of the world. So thank you so much for being you, for sharing that, and for living a life of adventure, exhilaration, and passion. I just hope more people can step in your footpath and join you on your journey.
Thank you, Rob.
That's a pleasure. Folks, for those of you who want to go and meet Karina, email her, contact her, follow her, do anything, we're going to put all of her social media details, website, everything else below. So I encourage you to be the very best web-based stalkers that you possibly can be, and go do that bit. And maybe, Karina, in the not too distant future, we can have another conversation, because I think there's so much more we could unpack, pull apart, and talk about. But thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.